My fellow FPV pilots, heed my warning. Winter is coming. Soon the land will grow cold and dark, and we will have to prepare our drones for their winter hibernation. Like the magnificent grizzly bear or the mighty African land snail, they will have to retreat into their burrows and protective shells until spring comes to warm the land once more. Until then, they must cede their dominion to the Tiny Whoop and their Night King, the Flywoo Baby Nano 20. This is a Tiny Whoop that I am so excited to have a chance to fly and review for you today, because I think this is the future of Tiny Whoops. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into what makes this little drone so special. Let's start by looking at some flight footage from the Nano Baby 20 whooping around my flat. Now, the version that I have has the Walk Snail Avatar Mini VTX, the 1S VTX. So it's a 350 milliwatt digital video transmitter with onboard recording. And I think the quality of the onboard recording, which is the footage that you're watching here, is really excellent. And 350 milliwatts was plenty for me to be able to fly all around my flat through walls without any noticeable loss of image quality or loss of signal. So it was really, really fun to fly around. And I mean, this is Tiny Whooping remastered, in my opinion. You know, you've got all of the fun, low risk and joy of whooping around, but now combined with the beautiful image quality that you get from a digital system. And I really enjoyed flying it. As I've been flying digital systems more and more over recent years, I've been flying analog, and therefore my Tiny Whoops less and less. But I think this little drone is going to change all that. So now that we've seen some flight footage and how it flies, let's take a look at it on the bench. So let me take you through the key features of this tiny drone and tell you why I'm so excited to review it today. And we'll start with the main one, the camera system. Now, the Flywoo Nano Baby 20 is available with an analog camera and analog VTX, but you can also get a version with the HD0 camera and VTX, and with this Walk Snail Avatar VTX as well. And I think we're going to look back on 2022 as the year when Tiny Whoops went digital in a big way. And I'm so excited about this because for a lot of pilots, one of the things that's holding them back from moving to digital video is that it doesn't work with Tiny Whoops, with micros, and those are the quads that they fly a lot of the time, particularly during the winter when it's not so great to fly outside. With the Walk Snail Avatar system developing more and more as they keep releasing better and better firmware for it, and with the HD0 system offering much better image quality with the same crazy low latency as analog, then there are now two really, really good options for digital video for Tiny Whoops. But of course, the quality of the video system doesn't matter if the rest of the drone doesn't kind of live up to that promise. So let's talk about what Flywoo have done with the rest of the build. The motors are the Flywoo Robo 1002 motors with 15,500 kV, which is going to be perfect for ripping around on 2S and going to give you plenty of power on these Gemfan 2-inch bi-blade props. The flight controller is the Flywoo GOKU Versatile F405 12 amp all-in-one, and this has got to be one of the very best flight controllers for Tiny Whoops out there. It's got an F405 processor, an MPU 6000 gyro, a 5V 2 amp BEC for running hungry video systems, an LED output pin, it's got 6 UARTs, 8 megabytes of onboard black box storage, a barometer chip, and most importantly, it's got Express LRS 2.4 GHz receiver built into the flight controller. And not a spy receiver either. This is the serial-based receiver, so it's much easier to keep it updated with all of the latest goodness from Express LRS. The prop guards on the Nano Baby 20 are plastic, they're removable, and they're attached just with 3 screws shared with the motor. They're the same prop guards that are used on the Venom hexacopter, and I wasn't a fan of the prop guards on that quad because it was more designed for flying outside. But for flying indoors, I would definitely recommend you to fit the prop guards so that you can just bounce off furniture and objects without it getting caught up in the props and causing a crash. If you're enjoying this video so far, why not take a moment to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss future video reviews like this one. Weight-wise, the drone comes in at 50.5 grams. And if you fly with this 420 milliamp hour 2S, that's going to take you up to 72 grams. And if you fly with this larger 750 milliamp hour 2S, then that's going to take you up to 86 grams. Let's talk about batteries now. Flywoo provide two battery holders for this drone, a 420 milliamp hour and a 750 milliamp hour, and they just push in and then turn through 90 degrees and lock in place. And it's actually really nice. That works really, really well. If we look at the batteries now, the 420 milliamp hour pack will give you 4 minutes of flight time, 3 to 4 minutes of flight time in my experience. And the 750 milliamp hour pack will give you about 6 minutes of flight time. I preferred the flight feel of the 420 milliamp hour pack, and it still had plenty of flight time and power for me. So this is the one that I would recommend for this drone. If you're looking for the longer flight time, then you could get the 750, but it's a little bit harder to control the throttle and the altitude with that heavier weight. The drone flies much better with the 420. Okay, Flywoo, let's see how you did with the Betaflight configuration. Now I can see we're on Betaflight 4.2. I would have liked to see Betaflight 4.3 because that's the latest version and it brings with it quite a few features that do improve flight performance. So I'm going to probably go ahead and update to Betaflight 4.3. The PID loop frequency is set to 2 kHz. So they've obviously done that to make sure that they have lots of CPU headroom on their F405 processor. F405s are actually pretty fast, so you can definitely turn that PID loop frequency up to 4K. You can't always run 8K, 8K on F405s, but 4K is definitely doable. Maximum arming angle is set to 25 degrees, and because you might want to use turtle mode to flip the drone over, I would definitely advise setting that to 180 degrees so you can arm even when upside down. I would also turn telemetry on here so that we can get telemetry back over the Express LRS link, but everything else looks pretty good. For the D-Shot beacon configuration, I always like to set the beacon tone to 3 because I think that's easiest to hear, and have it so that it beeps on RX lost, so it beeps when you fail safe. So looking at the PID tune, I can see that Flywoo have put a custom PID tune on this drone. So I'm going to give it a fly with this PID tune and see how it feels, and then I might tune it a little bit more myself. And the same is true of the filter settings. Flywoo have reduced the gyro filtering a little bit, but left the D-term filtering stock. So I'm going to give it a fly on this and then maybe tune it a little more myself based on what I see in the black box logs. Flywoo ship this drone with 2 modes set up, an arming mode and horizon mode. Now for new pilots and tiny whoop pilots, I would actually suggest that rather than horizon mode, they have it set so that angle mode is permanently enabled, and then allow pilots to set up their modes as they like. So this is how I would suggest that it ships, and then I would obviously change these modes to match how I want it to fly. Looking at the motors tab, we don't have bidirectional D-Shot enabled, so that's something that we are going to want to enable. But we are flying props out, which is good because that will give us a bit more authority. So Flywoo have motor stop enabled. I would disable this for safety reasons. And that brings us to the black box tab. And this quad has 8 megabytes of black box storage on board. And this makes me so happy. I reviewed an Emax 3.5 inch quad a few weeks ago that didn't have any black box storage. And I said that you shouldn't buy a quad that doesn't have a black box chip. And Flywoo have managed to squeeze onto this tiny flight controller 8 megabytes of black box storage. And this goes to show that if they can do it on this quad, on this flight controller, you can do it on any quad. Any quad can have black box storage on board. And I'm thrilled that they've managed to include this. So I would set that logging rate to 1 kilohertz is fine, and we'll log gyro scaled so that we can see how the noise performance of the quad is without any filtering applied. If we take a look at some black box log data from this little micro, we can see that the gyroscaled log on roll is exceptionally clean, and this is to be expected. 2-inch props and tiny 1002 motors make very little vibration, and it's very easy to make something this small incredibly stiff, especially when you have a carbon fiber frame like Flywoo has. So we should expect this excellent performance on roll, pitch, and yaw. And this means that we can be very aggressive with our filter settings for this quad without worrying about getting hot motors. So that brings us to the end of this video, and it's time for me to give you my conclusions on this Flywoo Nano Baby 20. So I used to play Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot on the original PlayStation as a kid, and I adored those games. I played them all the time. But more recently, when I've gone back and played them, I've always been disappointed in the graphics. It didn't look as good as I remembered it. But pretty recently, both Spyro and Crash were remastered for the PC and PS4, I think. And I played them on the PC again, and it totally recaptured my love of those games. And they looked just as good as I remembered them. And the same is true for this Flywoo Nano Baby 20. I used to fly tiny whoops loads on analog video, and I used to love them. But as I fly digital more and more, I fly analog less and less, and I get more and more used to the image quality that you get with digital systems. This quad has remastered tiny whoops for me. It's got the quality of video that I'm used to and that I'm expecting. It flies brilliantly, and it's small enough and light enough to whoop around indoors for hours on end. It's just an absolute riot. I love it. And I can't thank Flywoo enough for making this, because this has brought tiny whoops back for me. And I know what I'm going to be doing this winter. I'm going to be flying them all around my house. So whether you get the digital versions, the Avatar version, the HD0 version, or you get the analog version, this is a great flying tiny whoop, and it's going to be just loads and loads of fun for ripping around indoors over the colder months. So that's my conclusion from an emotional standpoint. From a technical standpoint, the features, the choice of components, the execution of the build, everything is just brilliant. The only thing I can fault, and I really have to dig to find something to fault, is that it's not running Betaflight 4.3 and it's not running Bluejay on the ESCs. Both of which you can fix within about 10 minutes of getting this thing out of the box, and then it's just perfect. So well done, Flywoo. You've made another fantastic little micro quad. If you'd like to pick one of these up for yourself, there are links down in the video description to where you can buy one today. And they're affiliate links, which means that if you do decide to use them, it really helps support me to make more videos like this. And it doesn't cost you anything. I get a small commission from the retailer when you buy the drone or any product. It doesn't cost you anything, it helps support the channel. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd use those links. That's all I have for you for today. So until next time, I wish you all very, very happy flying. I would suggest you update this little guy to Bluejay for the ESCs. So if you go to escconfigurator.com, plug your quad in over USB, hit connect, and then plug in a battery. Read the settings. Now we have all the settings. We want to update our ESCs to Bluejay. So flash all ESCs, tick this migrate settings, and then select the Bluejay and 0.16, and we want 48K PWM, and then hit flash. And that will now update all your ESCs to Bluejay, but preserve all your BLHeli-S settings, so you don't need to go and reset those. To update your Nano Baby 20 to Betaflight 4.3, we're going to connect. We're going to go to the CLI and type diff all, and then save that to a file. I'm going to call that Nano Baby 20 4.2. Then we're going to want to go to update firmware, make sure the Flywoo F405S AIO is selected, and we've got Betaflight 4.3 as the latest firmware. All of these are correct, so you want full trip erase turned on. load firmware, and then flash firmware. Now it will erase and flash the new firmware onto the flight controller. Go into the CLI and paste in the 4.3 diff that I've provided for this quad. It's down in the video description. There's a link there. So just paste that in and hit enter. This diff does assume that you have updated your ESC to Bluejay because it does use bidirectional D-shot for dynamic idle.